So, um, one thing just to kind of think about, because you have this fancy digital camera, and when you look at that mode dial, it's got like all these like little pictures. Okay, so that's like something cool. Like you might want to think about, um, and like read up in your manual, like, hey, what does actually my camera do? Like, what does it mean when like I set the mode to like a woman wearing a hat, right? Like, what is that? What is it? What's it mean when I set it to a flower? Or what's this like baby crying? Okay. And then what's MASP? All right. So, just in general, P stands for program auto mode. In this mode, the camera sets the shutter speed and the aperture. It's like auto mode. Okay. S is for shutter priority. Okay. So the camera tries to um, optimize the exposure using the shutter, which is like what you would want if you're like photographing, say, like a sporting event, okay? And you're trying to stop motion. So that S mode, shutter priority, okay? Oh, I'm sorry, it doesn't choose. In this mode, you choose the shutter speed and the camera automatically selects the aperture. Okay, I should read that, all right? A, aperture priority. In this mode, you choose the aperture. Okay, so if you want like a really small aperture or a large aperture, okay, depending on what you're trying to do, and then it fixes the shutter so it's all optimal. Full auto mode, the camera does everything. So why is that really different than programmed auto? I don't know. And then M, you're in charge. You have control. So we're going to be M this week. Okay. Let's go down another one. Okay, so a little bit just like, because I find the technical stuff of the camera interesting. Maybe you don't. But like, what's going on here? So this is light kind of like uncontrolled. It's hitting this man smoking a pipe, um, and light is reflecting off of him, okay? And this like little thing here is like trying to collect it. So this is like light trying to be collected without control, okay? Light is bouncing and reflecting everywhere. So what does the lens do, okay? How is it different than like a little, just a hole in the wall or a pinhole, okay? My classes, when we meet in person, sometimes we make pinhole cameras. We make a camera out of like a box, okay? And we capture light that way. So the smaller the hole, you can see here, the more focused it is. The larger the hole, okay, again, it's going through here, bouncing, it's collected, and it's focused again, it's blurrier, okay, and you can see that here. But what is going on with the lens, and why is the lens so unique, okay? Because here, the lens is a convex shape, okay? It's like a little like ruby or something, you know what I mean? And it goes through, and it's collected here, and then it's straightened, okay, just for a second, okay, just for like a little tiny sliver. That light is kind of refocused and it's sharper, okay, and it's precise. We get this perfect replication of what's going on here, okay? So let's talk about these specific things, starting with the shutter, okay? So the shutter adjusts the amount of time adjusting the amount of time the shutter remains open controls the amount of light that reaches the light-sensitive surface. Okay, so here I have this little picture. Here is a quarter of a second. Here's a 30th of a second, so like a half a second, and then a 500th of a second. Okay, and that is stopping time perfectly. Okay, so the shutter lets in the amount of light for a certain amount of time. Shutter speeds that most commonly your camera will display. So when you see a 1 displayed, okay, that's 1 second, okay? When you see a 2, that's like a half second. It's kind of funny how it just kind of does that, all right? When you see like a 60th, it's a 60th of a second, 60th, 60, okay? Or 125, it's not 125 seconds, that is 1/25th of a second, okay? So the rule of thumb, generally, when you're shooting is that a 60th of a second is quick enough when you're shooting like handheld that you're not going to get any camera shake. Okay, some people used to swear like they could shoot at a 30th or whatever. You can kind of get away with that. But that's kind of like your point where you're like, okay, I can't adjust my shutter speed anymore. I gotta like open up my aperture. So here's some slow shutter speeds. Again, here's someone stopping time perfectly. Okay, beautiful photograph. And the shutter speed, well, that's probably like a 500th of a second. Okay, to get it that crisp, or maybe even faster. Okay. Let's keep going. So a little bit more about camera speed. All right, shutter speed, sorry. So here we have a 30th of a second, and we see that it blurs, okay? Here we have a 500th of a second. We see like, oh yeah, that really kind of gets her, all right? But here we go back to a 30th of a second, and we're seeing like, well, wait, that woman's in sharp focus, okay? So a little bit about like capturing movement, it really depends which way the movement's going. So here we see the woman is coming at us, and that's not the same experience as we got here. Okay, so you have to kind of think about additionally what is going on in the scene that's going to dictate how my shutter should be used. And here again we have a 30th again, but it's saying, oh, the camera is panned. So what does that mean? So here the camera is moving with the woman. Okay, so as the woman moves, the camera moves, all right, and it's fast enough, or slow enough, I guess you would say, that it captures her, but then the background is blurry. Okay, so panning is moving with the object. So here we have the aperture. All right, what is that? That is the size of the lens opening. It controls the brightness of the light that reaches the sensor or film. Okay, so again, that's letting in light, but in a different way. Here we have more of apertures, okay, and what they kind of look like. Now your camera is going to have a lot more options than these. I think typically now they have ones that go between, okay? So you probably have between f2.8 and f4, you have maybe like a 3, okay? Between 11 and 16, you might have a 14, okay? But let's talk about these a little bit. So the higher the number, okay, the smaller the opening, all right? The lower the number, okay, the larger the opening, okay? And each one of these lets in about twice as much as the f-stop before, okay? And again, this is like the old school look of apertures. There's many more like in your camera at this point. Also, I think for the most part, they're not on the lens anymore, all right? I don't think in any of my digitals they are. All right, so aperture, the one thing that it can do, like its superpower, okay, just like shutter speed can like stop time in different ways like we were seeing. The aperture controls depth of field, all right? So the smaller the aperture size, the more of a scene that will be sharp from near to far. So if we got this kind of look, like, okay, so he's perfectly focused, all right, but then as the picture recedes in space, all right, we see that that's more in focus, okay? It falls out a little bit, but we get you know, the generalized information is crisper, all right? So here in this image, all right, we have a shallow depth of field, all right? So a smaller aperture, like number, like 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, all right? And then the background kind of gets all blurry, so we're kind of stuck in there. So, like, what is the correct aperture then? You know, is there an acceptable, depth of field that everyone agrees on is like, well, that's correct, No, it's kind of up to you. So it's like artistic license or your artistic decision of what you want for depth of field. Like, what's the picture you want to make? So here's aperture again, kind of talking about it. All right. So in this example here, we have this crew, right? A, B, and C. Now the photographer is going to do a large aperture, and he's going to have less depth of field. So here he's focused on him, all right, meaning like he's not focused on him. He's correcting his lens to be sharp here, with the focus ring. So he sets this low depth of field, 2. Now this boy, partially in focus, all right? But this guy back here, we don't see anything, okay? So large aperture, less depth of field. So here, in this picture, with the photographer again, here he is, he has set a small aperture. Now his plane of focus, what the focus ring is honed in on, is here, A, and now A, B, and C, they're all pretty good. Okay? So he gets an optimal depth of field. So he set it to F16. All right? Here we have, again, Edward Weston, F64. So this thing's focused for miles. All right? Uh-oh, nothing's in focus. What happened there? Uda Barth. So using shutter and aperture together, all right? Working together, okay? How do they work together? We'll start here when I come back.